Now in this video, we're going to be making 1 gallon or 4 liters of watermelon wine. Hi, I'm Charles and welcome to DIY Fermentation, your site for doing fermentation on a shoestring budget. Now, there are no new members to report at the time of this video. However, memberships are an excellent way to help support this channel, as are being a subscriber. There is a channel PayPal account for donations for equipment, which this channel always seems to need. Any support you can give would be appreciated there. However, that being said, let's get on with the video. All right, to make our watermelon wine, we will be using the following. Watermelon. I've got 3 of these. We need to make at least 2 quarts. More would be better to give us our 1 gallon of wine. Going to be using granulated sugar. I'm going to be using a Red Star Classique wine yeast this time around. If you don't have this, use whatever you've got. We're going to need black tea, which is going to be our tannin substitute. Going to need the juice of half a lemon, which is going to be our acid blend substitute. We're going to need enough water to give us our full 1 gallon measure. We're going to need something to do primary fermentation in. We're going to need airlock with stopper or bung, as you prefer. And we're going to need something to do secondary fermentation in, because after a couple of weeks in here, you're going to transfer it over here. And then you're going to do it, make that transfer called racking every 4 or 6 weeks or so until your wine is gone clear. It's going to be helpful if you have a hydrometer, so we can determine how much alcohol we're producing and when fermentation is actually complete. And of course, using your sanitizer of choice, make sure that all of your equipment and utensils are clean and sanitized. And there we go. That's what I'm going to be using to make this wine. Okay, one of the first things we need to do is that we need to slice our watermelon and get them in the pot. We're not going to boil it this time. Nice ripe watermelon. But we just need to juice the watermelons. So in order to get that process started, take your first watermelon, decide how you want to slice it, whether you want to go lengthwise or crosswise, and then cut them into various slices. I mean, however you want to do it is entirely up to you. I think in this case, on this one, I'm going to try going crosswise. I'll probably regret it, but be very careful. Make sure you have a nice sharp knife. Make sure your fingers are well away from the business end of the knife. And just go ahead and cut it on through. All right. Now all we need to do is decide, and these were seedless watermelons, by the way, although I kind of have to wonder, I mean, if they're seedless watermelons, why are there seeds in it? Anyway, from that point on, I mean, we can either scoop it out and put it in the pot, or slice it up and dice it up and put it in the pot. Either way will work. I think in this case, I'm going to try, even though it means a lot more cuts, being very careful once again. Try slicing it this way. And then from there, move this out of the way. From there, I can just pretty much cut around the rind portion of it. Make sure I got the good parts to go in the pot. Put that off to the side. And then from there, we can just pretty much just dice them up, slice and dice, however we see fit. Because we're gonna have to mash these up. So I'm thinking the smaller the chunks, the better. Okay. and into the pot they go. Of course, now that I think about it, spatula or something like that would have been useful. But as you can see, the process is going to be a little wet. And that's just one slice. So I'm going to go ahead and slice the rest of these up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I've sliced and diced just one of our watermelon because I'm curious to see just how much juice I'm going to get from one melon. There are a number of ways in which you can mash up to try to extract the juice from your watermelon, but I've decided, since I've got one and I don't really use it for mashing potatoes anymore, I'm going to use a potato masher that I've sanitized, and then I'm going to take the results, or what remains, and I'm going to put those in a straining bag and strain out the rest of the juice. Now, you can use a muslin bag, or you can use a cheesecloth, or whatever you got, but that's what I'm going to do here. So let me get started. I am getting, even with one watermelon, a fair amount of juice. I think I might be able to get me a full gallon out of just 2 melons, which would be cool because I don't get a chance to eat watermelon all that often. And it would be kind of nice to have one available because it is 90 degrees outside. All right, now that we've squeezed out every last little bit of drop we're going to out of that one watermelon, let's find out how much juice we got. This is a 2-quart container. And go ahead and add 2 more cups. Okay. So I've got 2 quarts here. And I also have another 4 cups here. So looks like we've got, well, we're getting there. We got 3 quarts of watermelon juice, which means we only really need the juice of about half a melon. So when we're going to the store next time around to make 1 gallon, we're getting 2 melons, but we're only going to use 1.5. And since we're not going to have to water it down with water, this will be a much more fuller flavored wine. So that having been said, it's time to go ahead and start working on that second melon. This I'm just going to put aside into the refrigerator, if for no other reason, just to get it out the way. All right, time for us to start preparing our tannin substitute. So we're going to drop in 1 tea bag and add about half a cup of water. Cover that up, and we want to bring that up to a boil with a nice strong cup of black tea. All right, now that we've had an opportunity to get our tea together, we can actually, at this point, turn off the heat, put our cover back on, and we can just let that come down to a good room temperature while we start preparing our acid blend substitute. So again, we only need the juice of half a lemon. Okay, let's start incorporating all of our ingredients together. There's no special order. We'll go ahead and add in our black tea and our acid blend substitute. And the recipe calls for 3 cups of sugar. or 1.5 pounds of sugar. All right, that's 3 cups. Go ahead and get that incorporated. All right, after a pretty good vigorous stir, I'm going to go ahead and take an initial hydrometer reading. That's coming in at 1.096. All right, my next trick is to get as much of this juice in our carboy, bringing the level up to about here-ish, because I don't know how much it's going to start bubbling up when it starts doing real fermentation. So go ahead and get that process started. Just about there. Now I should know that I should stop it right about there, but since I've got about half a cup of this left. All right, common sense says stop there. Because if it starts bubbling, it's just going to bubble through the airlock and it's going to create a mess, and I don't want to deal with that. So we're going to stop it there. All right, it is now time to change our watermelon juice into watermelon wine. Again, we're going to be using 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and just going to do our best to sprinkle it around as best as possible without dumping it in there. Now, if you're using a wide mouth fermenter, then yeah, you could have used the pulp, the watermelon pulp that was left, and put those in straining bags and then put everything into the fermenter. But since my wide mouth fermenter is currently in use, I can't do that. So plan B. Once that's in there, we want to go ahead and insert our airlock after it's been properly filled with the appropriate amount of liquid. And the last thing that we need to do is that we need to label our creation. All right, let's go ahead and give our creation a name. We are making watermelon wine. We started making it on that date, and our starting gravity was 1.096. Now, if you are using a wide mouth fermenter for the next 3 days, give it a pretty good stir, vigorous stir. Get some little oxygen in there, help the yeast out a bit. If you're using a regular carboy, a 1 gallon carboy like I am, and you still have your cap, you can just go ahead and remove your airlock, screw your cap back on, nice and tight, and give it a good little shake. Probably more than that, but just a good little shake. After 3 days, don't do that because you'll do more harm than good. But first 3 days are all you really need. And there we go. 1 gallon, or in this case 4 liters, of watermelon wine. Now I should also point out that this is just first stage of the fermentation process. I mean, there's still some follow-up steps. After, well, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, you might want to begin thinking about racking this into a secondary cardboard container. That's when you start seeing a layer of sediment building up along the bottom, and continuing that process every 4 or 6 weeks until your wine starts to become clear, and at which point you can probably start thinking about bottling it. But you're looking at another long-term project, at least 12 months, to turn watermelon juice into wine. Just like with any other wine, the longer you wait, the better it is. If you like what you see here, please click on the subscribe button. Memberships are always welcome. Appreciate those. And as are donations to the channel's PayPal account. So again, I'll see you in the next video.